I think when we talk about restoring standards, I'd just like to maybe take the last little bit. And again, we're going to open up a can of, as you know, I'm in the middle of a 4-hour series right now and on captivity and prisoners. And so, we're just going to open up the can. If you guys want to rip the lid off and dig in on deeper things, then I suggest you go deeper in the information that's available. But, kids are going to make mistakes, right? Of all different sizes, right? You got you don't, but there are kids that are going to explore drugs. There's kids that are going to sneak out. There's kids that are going to, want to have a boyfriend or girlfriend, and you haven't decided that's okay. I mean, there's so much there, but when you work through grace, we talk about restoring the standard. It's such a big subject, and maybe take a minute with that with kids. But if we have enough time, if you could just touch on open up the can of restoring the standard in your marriage, that I think you talked about at the very end of the last episode. Maybe it was offline we were talking about it, but yeah, you were talking about the story of the child that treated the mom the same way that he had, but they had restored the standard, so that's not okay. I think in a lot of relationships where a parent makes a mistake, the other parent uses that as leverage to control the perpetrator. And if I can keep this bitterness over you, then I can somehow make you have a different behavior. And by restoring the standard, it puts you back level playing field, and the person that's hurt wants the power of unforgiveness. And yet there's really no power. It's false power. And it really creates a greater wedge to where you drive that behavior more deviantly, more sneaky, or more bitter, or complete disconnect. So I'm opening up a big conversation, but if you don't mind, maybe just taking the balance of our time here today is restoring the standard with kiddos, and then restoring the standard in your own relationship when things have gone down.
Yeah, it's really good. I would encourage people to really listen to um, all your information that's out there, because I don't know anybody who probably teaches on this topic better than you do. And most of what I know about this was you and I, um, really connecting through tough seasons and in seasons of my life that I was even struggling to for forgiveness for myself and for others. And when you introduced these concepts to me, man, I kind of resisted it, but it really is a game changer. So, just I'll give you a couple examples with the kids of where I've seen it really make an impact. Okay, um, for instance, I remember when Jerus, who's 13 now, he was probably 7 or 8 at the time, maybe 6 or 7 or 8. I don't remember. He was pretty young, and he was really challenging, authority and just resisting. And that's one thing. But then he was starting to do, he was starting to like steal.
Truth.
It's funny looking back now because we joke about it a little bit because the other kids knew he had all these little random things he was stealing from around the house, and he had them under his pillow in his bed. He's creating this collection, and I think he moved them to a drawer. But eventually, as we were catching him kind of doing whatever he was doing, stealing something he thought was cool, stealing something out of a drawer here, whatever. And remember, I had to discipline him, but one of the things that I knew there needed to be two things. There needed to be the extra effort of me not just, first of all, not just being angry and trying to just punish because I'm angry. Instead, I got to get myself on track, make sure that before I walk into that room, that my heart is all about him being discipled into becoming who he really is versus this kid who's stealing things. So I would have to, of course, we'd have to discipline him, but then I would speak into him, and I'd be like, Drew, you are not a thief. You're not a person who steals. You are like a really good boy that's just doing some weird stuff right now, right? And I would take the time and really invest. And you know what happened? He'd do it again 3 days later. And so you know what I would do? I would do the same thing, and I would say it in a different way. But this is not who you are. Let me remind you of who you are. You are an honest kid. You're an honoring kid. That's who you are, right? You're a kid who earns everything, doesn't have to try to take anything that you haven't earned. Like I would take the time. And you know what? He did it again 3 days later. And this went on for like 2 weeks. And Jackie was at her wits' end because she just like, we're like, what are we going to do? And finally, I remember, I think what happened, it was kind of bleeding over to other things. So I remember playing basketball with him in our driveway. And he's a competitive kid, but again, this whole character thing he was testing. So even if there was like, it's out of bounds and it was really off of him, obviously, he would lie that it wasn't, you know? And so again, we're going through this, and I had to keep on. And finally, I think it was probably after 6 different times. And you got to remember, you're starting to get frustrated after two. You're starting to get concerned after three. That I'm not getting through. But it's like the sixth time or so, and I'll never forget being in his bedroom, and we had just gone through the process, and at the end of it, I'm hugging up on him, and I'm like, Bruce, I don't want to remind you again. You know, you were. I want you, and it made him look at me. I'm like, you're a good boy. Like you were a really, really good boy. And I'll never forget, Brad. All of a sudden, it was like I could see the light bulb go off. You know, and all of a sudden, he like his whole expression changed, and he looked at me, and he looked me straight in the eyes, and he got like kind of like, I am a good boy. I'll never forget him saying it. He's like, I really am a good boy. You know, he was almost like, you're right. I never had like one of those kind of issues again. Like I just didn't have it again. But I was like, I think it was actually you, one of our conversations way back then. It was right around that time. I remember you saying that as a parent, it's one thing to discipline your kid. It's another thing to do the extra work to make sure you're speaking into their true identity because the world is attacking it nonstop. And he said, will you be willing to commit to that extra effort when you are perturbed, when you are upset, when you are bothered? And I'm so glad you taught me that because I watched it in real life with my kids. Now, on top of that, of course, you finish up and all of a sudden he had done all that things. I never called him a thief ever again the rest of his life. We restored the standard. He apologized for it, man. Like all that stuff's gone. It's done. It's like it never happened. We don't let each other bring it up. And man, there's so much freedom in that. So, anyways, that's just the first example that pops into my head. But there's so much power in it, Brad, because I can still remember things when I cheated in school when I was in second grade or something, and I was a good student, and I remember being labeled as a cheater. I remember that, and it never went away. Like it never went away. And so, anyways, but there's power in this for sure.
Yeah, I think parents, untrained, believe that fear will alter behavior long term. You are a thief. You are sick. You're a pervert. You're messed up if you get caught with porn or something. Right? These harsh words, but in reality, the only sustainable method of behavior alteration in anybody is love. It's the only sustainable because it's the only thing that's there when you're not. Fear goes away because if you're the punisher and you're not around, fear doesn't work because the punisher's gone, right? But love transcends all environments, right? And that's where I love the idea of discipline being discipling. You said that, shared that in the last episode, and that when a human being makes an adjustment in their behavior, it's more of a grateful response to being spoken to lovingly and identity work, right? Because when you take something out of someone, there's a void, right? You're not that person. Well, who are you? You're this person. And as you instill that you're a good boy, and Drusy just, it melted into his soul, like, I am, right? You took something out, bad kid, inserted wonderful kid. His life became not disciplined, it became a grateful response to a new truth, right? And that's the long, slow work in parenting, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. It really is effort, and again, I just encourage other parents out there that there might be seasons where you feel like all this extra effort you're putting in isn't landing. And I think we've all been there, and it can make you question yourself a little bit. I would just suggest that I promise you the deposits are being made, and you will see a return on your deposit. Just don't let up. Just don't stop depositing. Because I look at, we could talk about this forever, but I can think of all these different seasons of kids doing things like Drews was doing. Every one of them's gone through them, and every one of them we had to fight for the identity through them. Every one of them, every one, and it was exhausting, to be honest with you, and it was frustrating. And when all this is going on, your life's still going on. You still have businesses, and you still have things, and you're dealing with your own junk, and everything else. And so you have to be on your game so much. So it's tiring, but man, it's so rewarding because it really does show up. It really does show up later on. I think it's one of the reasons why, because we've always stuck to. I think our kids don't mind us disciplining or running kind of a tight ship or having our systems and structures. I don't think we get a lot of rebellion because I think they've just so consistently seen that our heart is to develop them into what we believe their true identity is, which is just absolute champions who are honest and loving and high character and winners. And they know that our intention, if we're ever trying to fix something, it's only to help them get to who they are, right?
Yeah, when you come in your house, you see you guys have done an amazing job of creating this I call the Dome of Shalom. You walk in there and it's just this environment of I love you, you're a winner. You can't look anywhere on a wall in your house and there isn't something reminded you of how you are viewed by those that are in the same room. You're loved, you're valid, you're important, you matter. It's everywhere, and hundreds of family pictures and organized, photo shoots, if you will, where you just took the time to be intentional about saying this picture matters, right? We're not just going to show up and get an iPhone shot. There's nothing wrong with that, but really the intentionality around that, I think that's, the time it takes to build and repair is way better than the time it takes to fix it when it's down the road broken. That was the saying. It's easier to raise a healthy child than to repair a broken adult, right? And you and I have been in the business of repairing broken adults for 3 and 4 decades because they didn't get the help. But if we can raise quality kids, if we can make that additional investment for a season, 6 times to help Bruce figure out that he's a good kid, versus the fourth time I'm going to spank you and you're going to stay in your room, you loser, and beat the submission change. It's so temporary because the fear's gone when the fear monger's gone. I think taking that time. I mean, I think about young families that have little ones, and it's so difficult for them. Like you don't have any idea how difficult it might be if it's like this at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Wait till they're 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I mean, we see families that are destroyed by drugs and alcohol and violence because when they were 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the standards weren't established. The identity wasn't anchored. And it wasn't about just disciplining, it was discipling. And man, that is a groundbreaking thought. And that's a root word of discipline is disciple. As a disciple, and you're restoring the standard, maybe you could just speak to that particular in a little more detail about okay, uh, you can't treat me this way because I failed if we've dealt with it through grace and people be willing to relinquish the power you have over a failed person, right? It's a power give, right? But power is an illusion anyways. Nobody controls anybody, right? For some reason we think I'm going to lord this over you so you'll never do it again. That's garbage. It's just garbage. You're ruining the relationship, and B, you're not. You're just delaying the inevitable. You have to come back and repair. So the restoring the standard is such a major event. Do you mind just giving us a couple more minutes on that? Maybe if you, even with you and Jackie, or maybe one of your kids, either selection. You don't have to be an example, but just how do you do it?
Yeah, I think with I think one of the biggest things that I don't know, I feel like we keep coming around to is this topic of identity. And when you make mistakes, I think that is when a door gets opened through your shame or your guilt or you're questioning yourself or through others, that where Satan can start really attacking your identity, like can start whispering in your ear every way that someone will allow it, which is usually through other people, especially people that are not trained in what kingdom identity is, they'll allow um, they'll allow their own wound or their own hurting to start becoming a voice for attack on their identity. Okay, you made a mistake, so let's label you as kind of like a mistake maker, right? And so I'm going to repeat it so often because ultimately I'm immature enough to realize that I don't even know how to forgive necessarily with grace. So my go-to reaction is to actually want you to feel some kind of pain. So that way, maybe if you feel enough pain, you won't make me hurt again. And it obviously doesn't work, right? But I think it's like so important, Brad, to just it's like our job. It's our I think it's our job as Christians that we should be hyper aware of the fact that part of our job with each other in community, whether it's with our spouse or with our kids or with our friends, that we should be trying to be someone that God can work through to help them get to the place that God intended them to be. That we should always be thinking of how do I help that person know who they are, and of course there's all these layers of attacks and wounds and traumas and stuff, but if we have that intentionality, now it's like, if you make a mistake, instead of me just operating out of woundedness and like labeling you and being a throughput for Satan trying to get in your head, why don't I just take a high road and just say, okay, the reality is, this is bigger than the mistake you just made. This is a door for you to really shift how you live life if we don't handle this properly. And so it's like, I don't. So just like, you and I, we've been grinding. We just talked about this the other day. We've been grinding on this identity topic forever, right? Like, and it's like, it's huge. But the more we talk about it, the more I can just see where there's this super special person over there with all the gifts and talents in the world, but yet somewhere along the way they were they made some kind of mistake, and now they're made to believe that you know they're that they kind of screwed up their future, or they're just a screw up. They're not actually a world changer. They're a person who could have been, who screwed up. And it's not true. You actually are still a world changer. You actually can become more after failure than you ever could have before it, right? And but somebody has to speak into their identity consistently. So yeah, I mean, in our marriage, I mean, it's a big thing, right? It's a big thing because, gosh, married what, 23 years, 24 years this year, and we've had our ups and downs, and we've had our share of mistakes, and but our goal, and I learned this actually from you, our goal in our marriage is to try to be more connected every single year. At the end of every year, we be more deeply connected. We got to fight for that connection. And part of that is realizing that it's going to be really hard to be connected to each other if we're not operating as who we truly are.
Right.
Right. So I have to take responsibility to make sure I'm protecting Jackie's identity. She makes a mistake. She's repentive of it. Repentance means radical mind shift, meaning that, like, okay, that was dumb. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to be that. I don't want to act like that. Like, that's what it is. It's not like I have to go and do something to help overcome the guilt for 3 years because I'm put in arbitrary prison that somebody made that's going to restore me.
Yep.
Like, where did Jesus ever do that? Like, seriously? And anyway, so it's my job to help protect her identity. I think it's my job to help protect your identity. It's my job to help protect my kids' identity. At the same time, and just even as a man, I got to be aware of this too, and be careful to not let other people tear down my identity. And so there's a level of that involved as well, meaning that, like, okay, if I'm feeling like a loser through guilt, last thing I want to do is surround myself with people that feed that. Instead, I'm gonna surround myself with people like you, who are gonna be like, what are you doing? This isn't who you are. Like, let's get back on track here. So yeah, it's huge, man. And when the standard gets restored, where it's like, no, I genuinely forgive you, and I don't want to bring it up, and I don't want you bringing it up anymore. Like, I think that's like the next level of it. It's like, I not only restore it for me, I'm not going to let you ever go there.
Yeah, that's good, Greg. We even had that conversation a handful of years back that I had. Well, I guess I'm not supposed to bring it up, but there was a time when I acted in a way that hurt our relationship, and we dealt with it one night around a fire, and you basically grabbed my shoulders and said, "This done. We're not going to talk about this again. Because we're not going to revisit the pain of that because that's not who we are." I may be breaking that
That's right.
conversation right now, but I just want to say those are live rounds. That's on the field, in the field, grinding things out. Man, I appreciate it. I think we'll just maybe sign off here for today, because I mean I could go till tomorrow, but I feel like what you're saying is in restoration, that in restoring the standard, if you will, that people have a couple different goals. One goal is to stay in power. The other goal is to make you disappear so they have peace. And I think the third option is, my goal is prosperity, soul prosperity, relational prosperity, right? And I don't think you can get soul prosperity by staying and lording over them for this failure. And I don't think you're going to get soul prosperity out of making someone disappear and become so passive they don't have a voice anymore. Because again, I want you to be quiet until my pain goes away. That's a very common punishing thing. I want you to be punished until I feel better, right? And that's the brokenness of a captive. And when we've hurt someone, we need to do the deep work to help restore them. They need to own the deep work of being willing to be restored. And the question is, why? A lot of people don't want to forgive because they don't want to be hurt again. And the only way someone will hurt again if that person hasn't been restored to true identity. If they go back to being the same perpetrator, the same hurting person, right? So if it's my wife or my kids, my number one goal, once we've dealt with the issue, is identity, identity, identity. I love you. You matter. You are not for sale. I'm not going anywhere. You can't out sin our relationship, on earth as in heaven, kingdom economy. And God says, I cannot out sin him. In man's mind, I go, yes, I can, but God says, right, that he's going to forgive us. That doesn't mean go out and do stupid things. It means be so embraced in his love. It's so massive. I don't need to discipline myself. I just want to be with this love. I just want to be around this goodness. And that, Greg, that's what I feel like in your families. There's so much goodness, so much genuine commitment to protecting the love and the unity in your family, that you don't need to get big and growl and punish and so forth, right? So, man, thank you, Greg. Any final thoughts or comments you want to give to people? I mean, we're way over time, but who cares? Thank you so much.
I'll just say one last thing. I think that that I think that a way forward for most people is just to recognize that just growing and becoming who you were intended to be. It's obviously a complex thing because we all have lived so many different scenarios, but it's very doable. And honestly, the journey isn't as painful as probably most would think. In fact, I think the more you step into the journey, the more pain starts going away versus anything less than that. And I feel like one of the fastest paths for growth is to make sure that you engage in healthy community, meaning like make sure you're listening to the Man Maker show, like and participate, like take notes and start studying and send questions and comments and fight to get around people. I mean, there's a lot of people like you and me out there, Brad, that we've been working on this stuff a lot, and we like helping people. We like helping people, but we also know that if you're not willing to take the time to even pursue help, you're probably not ready for it. And so we would be kind of wasting our time. But if you do pursue it, you got tons of people like us that have been through a lot of stuff and have learned a lot of things. We're just like, we can't wait to pour into you. So I would just encourage people to not feel alone, or to not put yourself in a position where you feel alone. Instead, like, listen, it might be a little scary, it might be a little intimidating, you might be a little afraid that people get to know your stuff, right? But that's the only way to it. You got to go through it. And so, I would just think that's what I would do. I would just and really invite people to start engaging. And when you find healthy people, really fight for a relationship with them, because it'll shift your whole life. It is the story of my life, is finding healthy people and then pursuit of them. And then it changed everything.
Yeah, that's it. I feel like mentoring others has brought purpose out of my pain.
Yeah, for
Right.
sure.
I mean, I hated going through it. I don't want to go through it again, but I can see that there was a greater a greater use of my failure than just punishment, but the ability to help other people avoid or get back up or get through. And that's what brings tears to my eyes and keeps me up at night till 3 or 4 in the morning studying, is I know there's other guys broken on their knees going, how do I figure this out?
Yeah, 100%. And you did it for me. You could have easily not, chosen to really invest into people and to use some of your experiences that were very painful to be able to actually, because when you leverage some of the growth you had through painful experiences, you almost have to relive them again when you help the next person. It's not an easy thing to do, but I just applaud you for being willing to do it. And I just want you to know it is making a humongous difference because, as much as you've impacted me, it's so interesting when I'm hearing myself talk today. I'm like, I think 90% of what I'm talking about, I learned from you. Serious. Like, I mean, I'm going back through our years of conversations and it's just part of my vocabulary now. That's because of your willingness to invest and also my willingness to pursue, and so it takes both.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening and thanks for your love and support. We hope that today's episode added tremendous value to you and your family. It would mean so much to us if you would partner with us on our mission of helping parents around the globe raise champion children in this crazy world.
To do so, simply take a moment to like and share this podcast with everyone in your network. See you next time.